All right, so I want to talk a little bit about meaningful work first. And around May of 2013, so it has been 2 years, I pretty much sold everything I owned. So this is a picture of basically all that I all that I had, and it was able to fit in that backpack. My backpack's much heavier now, but during this time period, that's what I decided to do, and it was to focus. I was burned out from a corporate environment, and just wanted to take some time off and just do something for myself. So I know there's quite a few students in here. So what I did first off was just binge coded for 3 months. Literally 3 months. It was pizza boxes piling up, everything. So binge coded on languages: C sharp, F sharp, Objective C, Clojure, JavaScript, and Ruby, and all great languages. I put little stars beside the ones that were my favorite. And I binge coded on frameworks. So everything from server-side frameworks, iOS frameworks, REST KDF networking, Socket Rocket, did some Node.js stuff, client-side JavaScript, AngularJS, rest in peace, Pixel, Pixie, Core Async, Overtone Composure, a lot of music stuff, was lots of fun. Real Sinatra, and of course Ruby Motion. That's where I find out about it. So I coded, and I also didn't code. So there's some really good presentations by Rich Hickey. Again, for those students that are out there, you just Google that guy. He's a really, really smart guy. There's some great presentations. With regards to like learning about businesses and how to run a business or how to bootstrap maybe like a technical company by yourself, microconf presentations are really good. There's also a really good book, Quiet the Power of Introverts. Little Schemer, if you want to get into Lisp dialects. Brave Closure is a good book, and then Thinking Fast and Slow. So those were notable books during that time period. So after that 3-month period, I came across this website, and what you see there when you go to it is some honking, and you see basically a title, a button that says Light Fire, and then the fire is dead, the room is cold. And when I saw this, I basically, it was kind of a reflection of where I currently was in my life, right? Really sparse presentation, minimalist approach, and one of my goals was to build some kind of game. So I actually emailed Michael Townsend. He was the guy that built the web version of the game, and I said, have you thought about porting a Darkroom the game to iOS? I'm a developer on a sabbatical, and he said, yeah, if you want to do the port, you have my blessing. I'm so sick of the corporate world too. If it goes well, there may be mutual beneficial partnership for us in the future. So, back to this idea of what it means to do meaningful work, connecting with people that have a shared vision about something is really hard to find. It is. I can't stress that enough of how difficult it is to find someone that has a shared vision. So I got lucky, was able to take a sabbatical, found someone with a shared vision, and went ahead and started the port of the game. And it took 4 months to build the game, and then I deployed it. And this is the revenue from December to March. Our highest day was $246. So I'm burning through $3,000 a month. I've taken 3 months to binge code. It took another 4 months to work on this text-based RPG. I deploy it and I make back maybe $1,000, $2,000, which is not fun. So it's a failure in dollars, right? And if you think about just money, that's all you're going to get. That's your only metric is, did I make enough? And then you have a failure or a success. But during this time period when I actually deployed the game, around I think right here, I made a Twitter handle for it, and I got a tweet from someone that said, hey, I'm trying to play your game. I'm having a little bit of difficulty with this specific part. And I play tested this freaking game for way too long. Some people have access to the source. You'll see my commit messages that say FML and all these bad things, stuff. At some point, I just put hot dog because I was just so exhausted from playtesting the game. So he replied to me and he said, no, I'm using the voiceover capabilities of my iOS device. So I can't see, I'm blind, and I'm playing your game using those voiceover capabilities. So one, that was like, holy crap, right? Um, so I went back and said, you know what, I'm going to make the entire game accessible to the blind. So that's something I promise you I'll get that working. Surprisingly easy to get that going. And, I did that for them. It was just, might as well a learning opportunity. I've got gamers that want to play my game that can't see, so I'm going to do that for them, right? So, these were, if you go to applevis.com, that's where you can find a lot of people that, if you want to make your app accessible to the blind, you can go there and they're more than willing to help you, beta test and all that good stuff. But on that site, I just got some unsolicited comments on that site, right? So I've got my three sisters addicted to the game, and since we're all blind, we all appreciate the new additions to the game. So thank you to the developer. A Darkroom helped me get through a particular tough time in my life. Thank you for providing such a fun and accessible way to tune out and heal. So this is, when I talk about meaningful work and I talk about success, these are the things you have to look for in the things you do. And it's extremely important. It is extremely important. That's one thing that I've learned during this time off. So around this time, and another thing that I want to emphasize is that as developers, and again, especially to the students, you have a lot of power this day and age. You have a power to create something relatively cheaply, put it out there, and potentially share it with the world. Okay. So around this time period, Michael Townsend's in Canada. I'm in Dallas, Texas. We've never met each other, right? And we deployed a game that has helped people, has impacted people, and can impact the world, right? So this is when the game went viral in the UK, right? So this happened March. That was the spike, the $2 and the $246 spike right there. And out of nowhere, over a 2-day period, it went from the number 500th ranked game to number 1 in 2 days. So this is to show you that you can make an impact without even understand. I still don't understand to this day why this happened, but you can make an impact, and you can impact people in a very big way with very little upfront income. So we got a lot of power, which is great. And not only can it span oceans, but it can actually connect people across the world, right? So this is the UK spike right there. That's what you saw. So within a 2-week period, it went viral in the US, and it stayed there for 18 days. Those are the longest 18 days of my life. Holy crap. It's like getting 5 numbers to a lottery and getting all those 5 numbers right. And then it's like, and the 6th number is, we'll tell you in a month. And it's like, why would you do that to me? So again, this goes back to this idea of you've got the power to really impact a lot of people. And even if you don't, the small group of people that you impact, it's still important, and that's what you want to search for across the work that you do. It's so important. So you can make connections across the world, and then if you make the game free, you can make connections across the free world. So this bump here, I've hidden it, but it goes to about right there. That was when it went viral as the number 1 game, as a paid game. I made it free for 7 days, and it got a million downloads over a 7-day period. So at its peak, it got 225,000 downloads in 1 day. So yeah, you can make a free game and impact quite a few more people if you want to. And even with all this, even with everything that's happened, the thing that's most important, and I really mean this, is that it's when you get emails like this. Okay, yeah, I build a minimalist text-based RPG. Some kid plays it, and they say, I was inspired by your game. I would like to create my own game using JavaScript. I'm 14 years old, which only makes it difficult, or maybe easier as I have more time to do this. How do I get started? And this is what I talk about when I when I talk about meaningful work. Okay. All right. So now that we understand what meaningful work, or at least what I see as meaningful work, let me go into more of the technical aspects of a darkroom. And let's start up Emacs, the one true editor. I alias Vim to Emacs, of course. so, so it is the one true editor. Just letting you know. We can talk about it. When we have questions, we can go into detail about that if you'd like. So, what Ruby Motion is to me, it's about doing meaningful work. Okay. And the interesting thing is that when I started doing Ruby, I was actually a .NET developer that was doing build automation. So my introduction into Ruby wasn't through Rails. It was just about writing, codifying, Jenkins and file system and things like that, creating objects and good constructs around creating builds. So I was a Rubyist first, in the purest form, I guess. At least I'd like to say. And it's about being part of this community. Again, it's meaningful, right? It's important to have this kind of community. So that's what Ruby Motion is to me. And I'm hoping after the explanation, the word meaningful work carries a bit more weight. So a darkroom written in Ruby Motion. Surprise, surprise. It's a minimalist text-based RPG. It went viral and has over 2.3 million downloads. It has 26,000 reviews, 4.78 star average rating. No, it was the #1 paid app overall, and when I made it free, it was the #3 paid app, free app overall. It's pretty freaking large for one person. It's got 14,000 lines of code, 2,400 lines of test suites, and it's a legacy app. It's 2 years old now. So I did a log, and I went to my first commit, and it was June 29th. So initial commit, 2 years old. So poetic almost. So what I learned, Ruby Motion rocks, and the Cocoa APIs will make you stab someone in the face. They are the most infuriating APIs I've ever worked with, which is of course why my second commit that happened about 45 minutes in was integrated promotion. So this was promotion at that point was like alpha release 0.7.2, and I was like, I don't have to create those navigation controllers. Screw all this. I created that. I've been on that. I was on that for until last week. So it was definitely good right there. So again, I said, dealing with the iOS APIs are some of the most infuriating APIs and usage behaviors that I've ever had to deal with. I'm gonna go to some examples about what it means to be a Rubyist, what it means to think in terms of Ruby in itself, and how it changes how you think about doing iOS development. I think that's a really important component. I think a lot of people that I speak with, when I talk about Ruby Motion, like, I can just use this other thing, or this other language, or this this other framework, or this other platform, and it's more about, yes, it's not just a syntactical thing. It's not about has some syntactical benefits, but there's this mindset of how you approach problems that a lot Rubyists share, and that's really important. So an example of this was so it turns out that if you make a game, if you add voiceover capabilities to a game or anything, if you have any kind of animation where you alpha in and change the opacity of an element, like fade in or some kind of cool animation, you will break accessibility. They can't swipe to your control anymore. So they can maybe touch and find it, but they won't be able to swipe to your control. So, just thinking as a Rubyist, like, how can I solve this? So, I created a module with this spectacular method, UI accessibility as a voiceover running, obviously. And I extended a UI class. So we spoke about doing mix-ins and whatnot. I went ahead and, because it was my own class, my own project, I opened up UI class, included the accessibility module, and then added my component of fade in, or my concept of fade in. So if accessibility is enabled, effectively it says don't do the animation. And so you set the alpha to 1, enable true, return false, self.hidden. So I basically return true or false based on whether it's accessible, whether it actually happened. Otherwise, I do the regular stuff. So the amount of it's just a lot, right? To think about with regards to, well, how do I do this fade in? I did with regards to animation. Again, this is an old code base, right? So I used a UI view dot begin animation, but I can use the block. I can use implicit blocks, do the instant eval, some like just really good Ruby things to it. And again, the premise is that I approach these problems as a Rubyist first. And I could have looked online, like, well, what are the best practices of Objective-C? But I took a step back and said, how can I think about this as just a Ruby problem? So here's another example. So again, legacy API. So I had iPhone 4 and iPhone 5 support, needed to get iPad support working. So basically, I set it up to where I've got some methods for returning, whether it's iPad, iPhone 6, iPhone 6 Plus now. These are some APIs with regards to ProMotion, having the nav bar, setting the game, and the app delegate. Some nice stuff there. So the app delegate has this concept of a screen. I use instance space screens and whatnot. Device height, I just kind of this is definitely pro stuff here, obviously, right? This is how you do it, right? This is how it works. It's worked so far. But the interesting thing is that I put all these behaviors in a module called room screen common, and then when it came and it has these ideas of like, well, init child screen and all that good stuff. And then when it came time to actually create the classes, basically it was okay. Well, include this mixin, initialize what I need to initialize, and give my rectangles for the locations of the buttons. So again, the core logic was inside of this common area, and then all this other stuff happened there. Okay. Again, this is about approaching problems as a Rubyist, instead of thinking about, well, how do you do it the Objective-C way? And generally speaking, I feel that turns out to be more elegant solutions. Okay. Again, everyone seems to build a constraint, some kind of layout constraint system. So because I don't know auto layout and I didn't have it, actually the game is still iOS 7 backwards compatible. So I don't know if I can even use size classes in auto layout in iOS 7 right now. We'll just say no for now. We'll just say no for now. But the same idea of like, well, how do I reason about this problem as a Rubyist? So using primitives, using symbols, thinking about, well, okay, I can generate a location with the move right button, and then the move down button is left of the move right button. Its Y is the same, its width is the same as that, and so on and so forth. Right? There are many different implementations. I would recommend. What was that framework that we talked about yesterday? Blue. Yeah, I'd probably recommend using their constraint system, and whatnot. But again, these ideas are consistent, and when you see other frameworks that are built by Rubyists, you'll see that consistency. Even though this constraint system is not used outside of this game, there are nods in the screens like, yeah, that makes sense. That's a good way to approach what you're doing. Okay, I love covering blocks because blocks are so awesome in Objective-C. So this is part of a Objective-C library called RESTKit. And this syntax right here, this beautiful piece of code right there, is a block in Objective-C. And then I call this the bloody stump operator because by the time you've typed it this many times, your fingers are bloody stumps from doing that in Objective-C. So yeah, you'll see that all string dictionaries have the bloody stump operator. Same thing with strings, and then you've got this madness here to actually do the block syntax, right? And that's Objective-C. So I can write this stuff in Objective-C, but why I would want to do that when I can, simply say, here's my definition for posting an HTTP object and then the callback syntax, right? So it's just much simpler. So that's more of the syntactical benefits of using RubyMotion over Objective-C. Class macros are nice. I love class macros. So this is a component in the game. I love building video games because you get to have methods like kill, throw grenade, snarling beast, right? It's awesome stuff. So this is how I explain a random encounter that you have in the game. You have the title, the text, the damage, the health, its DPS, and its hit percentage, and then what you get out of if you kill this thing. Okay. The same thing in Objective-C is not that nice. So I can get half of it on here. Well, there we go. I'll start right there, I guess. It's not that nice. Okay, so you've got your bloody stomp operators, and value types can't be part of dictionary, so you have to wrap it in some kind of object. I know, right? It's crazy. It's crazy. No concept of a symbol, so you have to use string values as your reference, as your idiomatic reference value, I guess, key value, and this madness here to do this stuff, right? So it's just painful. You can do it, but then you have bloody stumps. Okay. All right. One of the other great things about doing Ruby is you start thinking in DSLs, and I love that comment of DSLs. DSL is basically methods without parentheses. In this case, it's a lot of dictionaries without that explain what this thing does. Let me show you this in action real quick. No, this is the first part of a noble circle. So this is a new game that I'm building called a noble circle. No, you're fine. You're fine. No, I will not tell you how to be. Follow the compass. There you go. So this is a game that I'm building right now. It's called a noble circle. It's built with Sprite Kit. You'll notice that there was no Sprite Kit stuff inside of the game. I'm going to show you a gameplay video of it. It's about a two-dimensional being that lives in this two-dimensional world and his journey through this two-dimensional world. All right? Whoa. So instead of, I created a DSL, right? So there you go. that's the game right there. And again, this is how Rubyists think about problems. It is so important. I'm going to make the claim that if you gave this to another developer, their solution wouldn't be as concise as this. And a Noble Circle is free right now, so please feel free to download it and enjoy it. I'm actually taking an iterative approach to the game. So like every 3 weeks, I'm deploying a new version of the game. So, but this is the DSL that I'm working with, right? So Ruby gives you that power. Final thing is testing. Please test your apps. And when I talk about testing, I talk about feedback loops. Okay, so what I'm looking for with regards to testing is not that you verify that your code is correct. What I'm trying to say is that what is the fastest, most sustainable form of feedback that you can have for determining whether the app is doing what you want. If that's hitting rake, going to the right screen and looking at the app, fine, that's fine. But a lot of the a dark room and the ensign is there's a lot of engine to that code. So my fastest feedback loop wasn't trying to spin up a lot of controls and make sure the app worked. It was through a test engine, or in this case, Mac Bacon, right? Um, so I have this event, and basically it's almost like a choose your adventure game, right? So I have a start, and I have scenes that you can go to, and those scenes show up additional text, which go to subsequent scenes, and those scenes go to additional text and all this other good stuff. And there's costs associated with it and whatnot. So if I have this construct, and I want to basically say, okay, how does this, I need to assert some things about this world, okay? A couple of things I want to assert is that there are 2 or fewer options, and that each scene has text associated with it, okay? So at least one option, but fewer than 2. Even if I was using some kind of static typing, that's something that you really can't assert about your system, right? Maybe you can create a type that sets it up that way, where it's either of type 1 option or 2 option, but it gets to a point where you don't know if the string is empty. They could initialize it with an empty string. There's some runtime exception that could occur. So even if you had static typing, you would have to deal with this kind of stuff. So with using MacBacon, I basically define the class instances that I want as an array, and those tests get applied to each one of the types. So I'm going to show this in action so you can see what this looks like. But basically, what happens is that these random rolls happen. So my test suite can say, okay, here's the class. I'm going to initialize it to have these dice rolls, and having these dice rolls will do a full traversal to the tree, make sure I don't have any acyclical or cyclical variations, and assert some things about this specific world, right? So this is an example of using Mac Bacon's extension. Really, really easy to create extension assertions. So you return a lambda that basically does your specific assertion for there. So testing, don't think of it as testing. Think about it as sustainable feedback. And just whenever you're running your application, that's something you want to think about. Is this sustainable feedback? Is there a faster feedback model that I could use to test X, Y, Z? And usually you'll find something that's faster than debugging your application. Okay. So we can see and the test suite has definitely saved my ass many times. Am I allowed to say that? Yeah. Saved my butt. So yeah, if I run rake spec, you're gonna see it. Hopefully, run through the test suite without errors. Right. So this is going in, testing different aspects of the game. It gets to the point where it actually starts saving the game, which takes a little bit longer time. I put everything in NSUser defaults, the entire game state. So it's like a dictionary, 2 dictionaries with 3,000 keys. Just serialize that stuff and put it in there. When you save the game, I don't even put it on a separate thread. It just on the UI thread, you just save the game. It's so awesome. I'm proud of that. So here, there was one bug that I sent to RubyMotion. It was like the number of arrays I was creating was like upwards of. To the point, it's like, why are you creating so many arrays? It's like, it's what I'm doing. It's like, well, stop doing that. It's like, okay. But yeah, this stuff is saving directly on its user defaults. And at the end, you're going to see basically the generation of where I have these tests, and then you'll actually see the naming conventions that it applied. I didn't write all these tests per se. I basically said, here's the collection and enumerate them. And saving the world. Hey, I'm saving the world. I didn't plan that. And then after that, maybe some spoilers in here. You might want to look away. Right, so these are all the variations of like all the assertions for different events that occur, and it goes through all of them. Make sure that they're valid for that specific run. So So now that I'm porting this over to Android, this is the first thing I'm trying to get working, right? So is the engine working? Is it valid? Can I get it saving and all that stuff? And then once that's working, it's like, okay, now I can start incorporating Blue Potion, right, and do all the UI stuff. So, but that's the technical aspects of a dark room. That's what a dark room. That's what this community means to me, and just thought I'd share that with y'all. Cool. Questions? Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, and the interesting thing is that he released the game as a permissive license, so I didn't necessarily have to do that. But you do the right thing. The frustrating thing is there are clones out there that basically took the web version, wrapped it, and then put ads around it, and then put it on the App Store. So we're still. It's been 2 years. We're still waiting on that registered trademark, so we can take those down. Common law trademark only has so much power, but it is what it is. Can just keep making good products, and they'll keep coming to you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the question was, have I ever thought about doing in-app purchases? There was one point in time where we're like, man, we should try this. We were going to do in-app purchases for the developer commentary, but from a philosophical standpoint, we didn't want to cripple gameplay. So that was extremely, extremely important to us that we don't do that. So we thought about doing an in-app purchase for the developer commentary, maybe an in-app purchase to enable easy mode, but take my money. But yeah, we decided against both of those things. We were almost going to release the developer commentary in-app purchase, but then the game went viral, so we're like, okay, cool. Yeah, don't have to do that. One thing we do is that we recommend that you gift it to your friends. So we say, hey, if you like the game, just gift it to your friends. And at that point, you're giving a token of appreciating someone you care about. You're sharing this experience with them, and then that helps grow the community. So we're taking that model and being trying to have a personal connection with the end user, and I think that's working for now. So the question was, are the subsequent games also with Michael? No, they're all my own. So a dark room was a re-envisioning of his idol game. I've consistently heard that the iOS version is so much better than the web version. Woo! So I added my additional storyline, additional game components, balancing, and then the ensign came out. That's my own creation, and then I've partnered up with a composer for a Noble Circle. So fun stuff. Mm-hmm.
Are there any particularly memorable or funny App Store reviews? Because you probably got more App Store reviews on Darkroom than any of us have altogether for all our apps.
There are, and I'll share them with you, I guess, at the next session.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Yeah. So I'm gonna. I guess I'm doing a session next. The next session is gonna be talking about how the game went viral, what I did, what worked, what didn't. So it's more general about if you're gonna build an app, these are things to take into consideration. And there are some very interesting reviews that I will be sharing. Mm-hmm.
Talking about meaningful work, have you looked at being able to take some of what you're doing and giving it to the community? So from the pattern of the things that you ran into, the way you implemented DSLs to be able to power the game, the way you use testing to be able to test the game.
Yeah, those things I know. I've shared the code with some of the people in the community. If you want the code, I can give you access to the private repo. With regards to testing, I've got actually everything that I've went through is on AmirRajan.net. I've also got some screencasts that talk about my approach to testing and just the thought process and whatnot. But I mean, that's really it. Unfortunately there's not a lot of quote unquote great stuff in the game itself that isn't inside of the web version. With regards to just the engine. My approach to testing is just that philosophy of feedback loops. But yeah, I'd be happy to share the code with you if you want to see it.
I've done a lot with teaching kids programming and working with them on a long-term basis, and they all immediately want to make a game.
Yeah, it's the best thing. It's so fun.
This actual
Mhm.
is much more accessible to them.
Yeah, and that was one of the great things was that I got a lot of emails from kids that were inspired to make a game because visually it was accessible to them. It wasn't 3D sprites. It wasn't like crazy particle effects. It was like, hey, I can put a button on a page. Like that's what I thought too. I was like, I can do this 4 months later. I'm still trying to figure that out, but but yeah, it's been really accessible. So I have some Twitch streams also that talk about like game development, and they're available too. And I can give you those links. Yep. Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about the process of binge coding, what that was, and what you were trying to get at was?
Yeah. So basically for me, I was with regards to what I did for binge coding. So I was in the corporate development environment, and primarily .NET. So the language itself is phenomenal. C Sharp's a very well designed language. F Sharp's really well designed. But generally in those environments, you're dealing with technology that's safer. So safer. Safer as in like 20 years old, right? In that case. So I was in a world where I wanted to be doing 2012 or 2013 technologies, but I was forced to code like I was in 2004, 2005. So for that binge coding, it was, I felt like I needed to better myself as a developer. So get better with technologies that were outside of my wheelhouse. And that's where that binge coding came in. So I was like, I want to learn, JavaScript framework. I want to do, some iOS development. I want to do things that I haven't been doing and prove to myself that I could pick it up quickly, work with these things and have a breadth of technologies. So it turned out it worked out really well because when I do independent consulting now, it's about integrating across the board. So I might be at a .NET shop that wants to do some Node stuff. How do we talk these things together? Or Rails and Node and iOS and .NET. Or I have this old SOAP-based service and we want to consume it. It's like, well, okay, I'm a person that can help you, do that stuff. But the binge coding was also about an exploration of languages. Also, I think that's really important. Don't know if you just know one language, you're limiting, your how you think about problems. So try to learn a different language that's not a language in your wheelhouse, right? So if you're a Ruby developer, that's dynamic object-oriented language. Do a statically typed functional language just to see how that world works, right? And vice versa. So I think that was extremely important during that binge coding time period to flex my brain that way. Mm-hmm.
So since you highlighted Clojure and F Sharp, did you find that doing these functional programs influenced the way you write Ruby as towards more pure functionalism?
Absolutely. So F Sharp, Clojure have influenced how I write Ruby applications. So there's actually a really good presentation by Gary Bernhardt. It's called I can look it up. If huh? There's WAT, which is awesome. If you haven't seen that, but he's got one where he talks about having a functional core to your application, and then having more OO style mutable outer shell. And that's kind of how I started approaching my Ruby application. So if I can do functions that are take in value types, value parameters, and return value parameters, and then do focus in where I do my immutability, I find that it just works out better. But yes, it does. It definitely influences how you approach applications, and you just start speaking more intelligently about trade-offs in languages. So one unfortunate part is that once you start learning all different languages, you'll hate all of them. So you'll deal with multiple personality or disorder, and you'll hate every single language you work with, except for Lisp. That's the one true language. Using the one true editor, Emacs, obviously. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So, given your experience with Clojure and also F Sharp, what would you like to be added to the Ruby language? What features of these languages would you really want to be in Ruby?
Man, so with regards to
For instance,
if I could bring some things from Clojure back to Ruby, what would I like to add? If there was some way to have, and it's impossible now that I think of it, but if there was some way to have a type that guarantees that if this is passed into a method, it's not mutated. Not going to happen.
I was more thinking about the macro system, but you make a good point as well.
Right. So if I say that, if I create this reference type, if I have a reference type and I wrap it in this class, or decorate it with some kind of metadata, that implies that when this is passed into any method, I have guarantees that when that object comes back out, it hasn't been mutated.
Okay. So basically, it doesn't mutate the arguments and the receiver.
Yeah, the receiver can return a new instance.
Okay.
That's fine. But as far as this thing going in, the origin object is not touched.
Okay. So it's like pure defining pure.
Yeah.
function.
Almost like read-only construct. Yeah. Yeah. And you can do that with value types, I guess, but once you start getting into dictionaries and hashes, those are some nicer constructs that I can't provide that guarantee. Unless I serialize it as a string. Yes.
So, for those of us who haven't done immutable languages, what would be the difference between what you just described and using dot freeze for an object?
So that, with regards to functional language, that's a component of functional languages, the immutable aspects to it. Another interesting thing is that you start getting a feel for a spectrum of constructs. So the idea there is that not everything has to be a class, right? You can have value in Ruby. We effectively have value types, modules, and classes. In F sharp, you have value types, you have tuples, which Ruby has a concept of, I guess. Tuples, you have records, which are almost like an immutable dictionary. You have discriminated unions, which is a combination of an enumeration plus some additional metadata. Then you have a function, and then you have a class. So you have this spectrum to say, I don't have to bring a tank to kill a mosquito. I can use one of these things in the middle. So that was an important thing that I got out of it. You also have an appreciation for type systems, and I don't mean like algol-based C++ type systems that appease the compiler, but type systems that actually help in the developer itself. So looking at F sharp, looking at Haskell, help me appreciate these are I guess algebraic-based type systems, having type families. Those things provide some affordance and guarantees that you wouldn't get in a dynamic language. So those things, and those come from Haskell and F sharp, which have more of a functional flavor to it. You also learn some design patterns that are functional based. So you have like a strategy pattern or factory and whatnot, and then you start getting into, oh, this is a fold, and being able to identify a functional construct saying, okay, a fold can be applied to this, or a map with a fold with a zip, and then you start composing these patterns together to solve problems. So it helps break down these ideas, saying that you don't have to. It doesn't always have to be a class. Yep. Yes.
Have you looked at Erlang as a platform?
I've looked at Elixir very very briefly. I love the ideas that Erlang brings to the table. Highly distributed, things are going to fail. You have things that spin it back up. I've seen it being reinvented in other languages, and at that point, it's like, why don't you just use Erlang? But I haven't looked at Erlang too specifically. I had a choice between looking at Elixir and Clojure, and I picked Clojure. Yes.
Can you explain why you think Vim is the one true editor?
Should we take that conversation?
So everyone, thank you again to Amir for technical explanation. We're going to hear from him again about the success and how to handle a horde of users attacking you. But first, let's take a quick break next door and probably round you up in about 15 minutes.